So with that being my closing comment, I'm going to pass the mic over to Dave Thompson, Museum of Fine Arts, Houston.
Hey, I'm Dave. So what I thought I'd start off with is just talking about our current documentation practice. Although we're building the system, our conservation database, we call it the ACD, we haven't yet implemented it yet. We're still in the development process. So currently we're still using a lot of Microsoft Word documents. Our paintings conservator absolutely loves Publisher, so she uses that quite a bit. Excel. There's another system called by conservation documentation systems called CDSD. Our objects lab is using this system. And then we have what we call our PCD. It's a photography conservation database. And this is a database that we had built for us. We contracted someone to build this for us in 2005. And it's a web-based or a browser-based application that we use to record conditions, treatments, preventative recommendations. You can search for specific reports or objects and create reports out of this. The original intent behind the ACD was to model it after the system that we already had to make it more usable for other objects like paintings and objects, works on paper and so forth, because this one is specifically designed for photography. But we found out in kind of going through the back end and looking at it and analyzing it more, the way it was designed, we can't keep track of the history of this object. For instance, if, say, last month I had a photograph that was in really good condition and it's on exhibit now and somehow it got damaged, when I go to update that record to say that it was damaged, I lose the fact that it was okay last month. So we didn't want to use the same model for the new system. And also the way it's written, it's completely impossible to exchange information with other systems. So because of those things, and because our conservation director was reading the Heritage Health Index report by the IMLS and their connecting to collections call to action, we applied for and received a very generous IMLS grant to build our own system for conservation documentation. So far to date, a lot of our time has been spent on understanding the different standards that are out there for cultural history information. Spectrum, CDWA, and the SciDoc CRM are the three main ones that we've studied, and are trying our best to be compliant with. We haven't yet built any kind of data exchange system, but the intent is that because we've designed this to be compatible with the SciDoc CRM and CDWA, that we can eventually electronically exchange information between other instances of the ACD and other systems that are compatible with those standards. So to that end, a lot of our design and development efforts have been focused on the back-end data structure, making sure that we have a place for all the prescribed data and groups of data, and that the relationships between those groups are correct in terms of the standards. As a result, some of the more critical ACD modules are more developed than others. For instance, we've spent a lot of our efforts on developing the conservation data tables and relations, because that's kind of what this is all about, and less effort on other modules like the project and actor modules, which I'll talk about a little more in a bit. We wanted to make sure that the basic data structure and relationships were standards compliant before elaborating on them so that we could avoid any major rewritings to the back end or the business tier, the user interface. Additionally, we've spent minimal effort on the user interface so that we don't have to do a bunch of rewrites on that. And but at this point, after months and months of testing and using real-life conservation reports and surveys, we're pretty confident that we have the basics down as far as the back-end data structure goes, and that it is compliant with these standards. And now we're building out those tables to include all the required fields and data that these standards say that we need to collect. So for right now, the ACD is all about data collection. We can enter detailed, like, narrative type reports and record survey information. We can print those things out and print out the survey results, but we've only begun the process of building, like, really hardcore searching capabilities and reporting. So, like, for instance, one of the questions that the conservators like to ask is, you know, I'm trying to find an object. I know I did this treatment on it. I can't remember what it was, but it was sometime between February and March, and I used B70, I think is the thing that they use and like to bring up all the time. So those kind of questions we can't answer yet, but that's where we're going eventually. And so the way I talk about it with the conservators, it's like the ACD is like hungry hippos. It's all about just gathering data right now, and in this case, nice Egyptian hippos. Since this is a system for recording and sharing conservation information, we thought it best to remain focused on the particular task of recording that information. We deliberately avoid trying to account for the entire conservation workflow. We see the actual acts of examination, treatment, and analysis outside the problem domain of the system. We felt that it isn't our place to try to influence or change the way conservators do their primary work. We're just concerned with the actual act of recording the information, that one particular task. We see other more traditional tools for documentation, as well as other conservation documentation systems, as tools with which the ACD must compete in a way. For instance, why not just use Word to write their reports if that's a lot easier? So one of our tasks is to make the ACD easy enough to use so that they have all the functionality of Word, but it's easy enough to go into ACD and do it there. And then we have our data, like, in a database and in a standardized format and whatnot. And that's that. So basically what we're interested in, oops, I got out of order here. No, I didn't. So basically what we're interested in is collecting information about actors, the who, what they do, the actions they perform, which happen in a particular place and time, and with respect to what object or group of objects. And so we have an actor module, which is similar to, or which will be similar to, like the constituent module in TMS, if you're familiar with that. Right now, all this is just a simple pick list of names, just to be able to get started. But one of our goals is to flesh this module out so that we can collect proper information about people, first and last name in separate fields, for instance. You know, what organizations they're related to, all these kind of things. The object and object cataloging module is much more developed, just because one of our goals is to be able to distribute ACD and have it stand alone, separate from a collections management system if necessary. If an organization doesn't have, you know, the funds for a full-blown collections management system, they can still use the ACD. They can do full CDWA cataloging in ACD, and they can do this for paintings, objects, photography, Descartes works on paper without having to have a CMS if they don't have one. And then finally, what we're most concerned with, obviously, is like collecting information about the actual conservation activities, such as the examinations, condition checks, analyses, treatments, etc. So far, our focus has been on collecting information specific to the object, like how what is the object's condition, does it need treatment, this kind of thing. And we're now developing the fields to collect information specific to the activity or process as well. So when did it happen, in what context, what caused this to have to happen, who worked on it, that sort of thing. And then finally, we have what we call our project module. And this is actually an idea we got from Tracker several years ago, talking with its developer. I think he calls it an organizing event. That was a little abstract for our conservators, so we're using the word project, which is still a little sketchy sometimes. But basically what it is an umbrella that records a higher level information about a conservation event in CRM terms. So a project can be a condition survey of a group of objects received for an exhibition, or an examination and treatment of a damaged object, or the examination or analysis of an object to determine its authenticity. The idea is that in each of these scenarios can be considered a project or organizing event under which several other smaller events occur. So it kind of contextualizes a group of activities around an object, so that, say for instance, we have this collection come in for acquisition consideration. It's like that can be our organizing event. We can look up that thing and find all of the surveys, all of the treatments, everything that we've done in relation to that event. So then, like I said, it brings together the actors, the objects, the things they do to the objects, and all of the conservation documentation that's produced out of these activities. It was really important for our conservators to be able to basically write reports however they want, like these detailed narrative reports that sometimes contain images and graphs and all kinds of embedded things, but also surveys. We do a lot of surveys at the MFAH, and the thing is, within our own group, our conservation group, every single person had their own way of thinking about surveys and organizing the data that they want to collect about an object. And it's also, each survey is also different depending on the type of object that it is. You wouldn't necessarily have the same attributes that you're looking at for a chair as you would a painting or a work on paper. So we had, it was about 24 different surveys that they gave to me. They said, here, we want to be able to produce this. And they were so wildly different. And we even had surveys from other institutions. And I spent about 4 months torturing my developer. He would just, write the back end, tables and whatnot. And then I would test that structure against a survey, break it, go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And finally we got it down to where we can pretty much accommodate any kind of structure that somebody wants to create for a survey. And we think that, we're hoping that this is one of the major strengths of this particular system. But before I show you, I'll warn you that the user interface, we want it to be, slick and, sophisticated and have, some helpful, gadgets and tools and whatnot, and, be easy to look at and user-friendly. But what we have is right now pretty primitive. It's a bit quirky. It has its limitations. It needs a little bit of grooming, a little bit of a facelift, that sort of thing. But the survey functionality is what's working right now, and what we're about to release to our peer review group to play with and whatnot, and get more feedback and see how that goes. I gave a similar talk about the project back in May, I think it was. And so if any of you were listening to that webinar, what we've done since then is basically a lot of bug fixes and enhancements based on the feedback we got from that webinar in May. And so now I will go to the conservation database. Right now, this is on a e-commerce development server just for outside access for purposes of this presentation. So that's why you have the funky URL there. And I forgot my password, so I have to log in as admin now. And so, let's see. Probably have to do a little bit of scrolling back and forth because of the screen size here. But what I wanted to show you, I guess first, is an example of the detailed reports that we're able to produce. And like I said, our searching isn't the greatest right now. But luckily, no, it isn't. This particular object should have 3 detailed reports associated with it. I am looking at the object module here. So it's not very attractive, but if I go down to the bottom of it, pardon all the scrolling, and click on reports, and I can see that we have 3 different reports associated with it. So I'll just open the examination report. And basically this is it's just 2 fields. One happens to be like a memo field that has rich text capability. This is where the conservators can come in and do word-like writing, report writing. And if I can find it here. I can toggle the full screen mode here. And we can basically come in here and type and format this thing however we like. And for some reason the images aren't coming up. There's a broken image thing here, but there's supposed to be an image of the object right there. So sorry about that. And then as far as the surveys go, sorry, there usually isn't so much scrolling around like I'm having to do right now, so I apologize for that. But here's a survey for our Cullen Glass collection, and it's just test data, of course, in this particular record, but we have this particular survey is grouped into these 5 different areas. One that contains the object information, one that contains the condition information, one that has information specific to the survey, a description of the object here, and any recommendations. And so what I wanted to do, hopefully real quickly, is quickly just show you how we create a survey, how that survey builder tool works. So the way that we're able to organize the surveys in different ways is we start off, it's kind of a hierarchical type structure where we have what we call section groups. And I'm going to select a couple here. Clumsy with the thing here. I'm going to add these guys. And you'll see we have 2 tabs here, one for survey and one for the artwork survey. And within these we can divide it up further into something like general information as a subsection underneath survey. Underneath the artwork section, we can do things like have like a general, again, just for general information about the object. We can have things like I can type here. Condition section and a recommendation section. And so let's say, for instance, under condition, I want a section that just shows me what the general condition of this thing is. So I'm going to type general here as an attribute group, and because I'm going to have a selection of or options here, I'm going to use a radio button control type so that I can only choose one out of the selections that I have. And I'm going to select from my conditions. Oops. Oh, I wasn't supposed to type that. There. Look up my attribute. Add attributes. Oh, sorry, I messed up here. How about this? I'll show you one that's already done because this is taking a little too long. And this isn't letting me do what I want it to do. So, we have a lot of work to do still, apparently. I apologize for that. Let me just go on. I have a few slides here. I'm sorry that's hard to see, but this is an example of what I was doing, where I have my survey broken into two different sections, surveys and artworks. Underneath artwork, I have the three different sections. Underneath, I can't even read this. Under the condition, or no, the description of the artwork, I have the materials and something else that I can't read here. Oh, wait. There. Whether or not it has any attachments. Here under condition I have, just general condition. This is what I was trying to create just now. I can have a group called general underneath or an attribute grouping called general underneath a section called conditions that has whether or not it's excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. I can also group attributes by other type things, like I want to know the condition of the housing or the frame. And if I want to have just general comments, I can put in a field that's like that detailed report that I just showed you. It's the same exact control, where I can basically go in there and type in a full report if I wanted and embed images and that sort of thing. That is when it actually works. And at the end of it, you can print it out. And because it's a browser-based application, the spacing of everything is dynamic, and we haven't really worked on the presentation and whatnot. But this is would be a printed example of that particular survey. So for the next phase, like I said, we're going to concentrate on developing it so that it's spectrum compliant, get all our fields in there. One challenge that we have is controlled vocabularies. I didn't really talk about it much when I was flying through my attempted demo there, but basically all we have is really pick lists. We found that trying to build authority controls and thesauri is really a project completely on its own. It's like a huge undertaking, and it also doesn't really make sense if we have like the Getty's AAT, and they're also working on a conservation thesaurus. So we thought we'd just save this as a separate project, maybe get their help in implementing the AAT within the ACD rather than try to build something from scratch. Searching and reporting we're working on. And we're also working on updating the user interface. And we're really trying to think about like how you flow through the program, how you get from one section to another, how the order of information that you enter. And so we're working on wireframes, and these are just wireframe screenshots, but this shows you here like our idea of having little widgets that give you certain maybe statistical information about what all have we conserved in the last year, or what's coming up, maybe by department or by individual. We'd like to go from this dashboard thing directly into a project or project record. Here, this would capture the overall information about a project, who all participates in it, what objects are related to it, if it's like a survey, that sort of thing, the status of the project, and any related attachments or images or documents that, like similar to Tracker, are links to those documents that will be managed by our DANs that Marty will talk about. And just updating the interface so like we have an image of the object that we're dealing with. This would be an example of the condition report screen. This is an example of being able to write a detailed report within the interface. And so to talk more about digital asset management and how it relates to conservation, Marty Stein, our photography and imaging services manager, will now take over. So thank you.